If you can believe it, the best language learning advice I've ever gotten that has helped me become a lifelong confident language learner didn't come from polyglots. It actually came from life lessons. I think that it is wonderful and kind of a surprise how much language learning has to do with life lessons that we have learned, either in our childhood, either as an adult trying to make it out in the world. And I want to share some of those with you today. The very first one that I thought about was from a dance mentor that I, especially in my teens, found absolutely changed how I danced. I used to be a professional dancer, and in my sort of pre-professional training years, my dance mentor that I had met, she had noticed that I was really struggling a lot. I wasn't doing or performing at my best like I usually do. And she had come up to me. She had also asked, how was I talking to myself throughout this whole process? Because again, training as a dancer, it is just like, training and trying to hit your goals at a gym. Of course, there's discipline involved. Of course, there's technique involved so we stay safe, but also so that we can advance, so we can build on those foundations and techniques bit by bit. But she had asked me, are you disciplining yourself so much that you are punishing yourself in the process? And as I thought about that, I thought, I guess I am a little bit, right? Because what does self-punishment feel like? I've always been a very high achiever. I've always been a perfectionist, and I think that also showed up in my dance training, but it definitely showed up in my language learning. One of the biggest ways that high achievers will punish themselves is through self-criticism. So saying you're already not good enough, saying you're not productive enough, you'll never be good enough, you sound or look stupid. And in the dance studio, I always told myself, I look stupid. Saying that same thing to myself over and over again, you can see how that wears on not just a person's performance in a goal that they're trying to achieve, but also on their soul, right? Also on their purpose for what they wanted to accomplish this goal for, right? I felt like I was losing a lot of motivation, which is why I wasn't performing up to speed with my pre-professional dance training. And my mentor really made it clear to me, are you using discipline as kind of a camouflage, kind of a disguise for what's really going on underneath, which is a lot of self-punishment that is manifesting as self-criticism, daily self-criticism, so much so that your body is associating the self-criticism, the anxiety that comes from talking to yourself in such a critical way with the environment that you are training in order to meet your goal. So that could look like, for me, being in the dance studio, my brain, because I was talking to myself so critically about my performance, it automatically made me feel anxious because my body assigned that self-criticism and anxiety with the studio itself. The same thing happened in my language learning, right? I started to think, I just have to be disciplined. I just have to be consistent. And when I had so much of that, when I was looking at other people and seeing what they were doing, and they also were like, hey, be consistent. That means you should do this and this every day. Otherwise, there was always the implication that you cannot be successful without discipline. I even took it to the next level, believe it or not, and said to myself, I am not going to interact with any of my friends or any of my family until I finish this chapter in my French textbook. Unfortunately, I said that to myself because I thought that that was discipline. And discipline, in that sense, frequently went over to self-punishment, right? Not only was I saying, I cannot do this work, right? I'm not smart enough for French, but also I can't give myself joy, right? Spending time with my friends or my family until I finish this goal, learning French and speaking fluently. And that really took the fun and the enjoyment and the fulfillment out of the process that learning a language requires, right? And we all must learn how to balance that. And when we do punish ourselves in this way, kind of like what I was doing with my French routine, that can quickly not only demotivate us and make us lose our purpose, but it can also make our routine itself a lot less sustainable. When we are convincing ourselves that our self-discipline is actually helpful, when we've overstepped a boundary with ourselves to the point where we are criticizing ourselves so much that it is affecting our performance, it is affecting our memory with language learning or any other skill, that's really when we need to step back. What is self-discipline looking like for me? Is it really helpful for me? Or is it bringing in so much self-criticism and self-punishment that I cannot fully enjoy the process, nor do I feel like I have the capacity to keep on going on because I'm so mentally blocked from all the self-criticism that I am giving myself. You can watch my live where I talk a lot more in depth about this topic, up and linked in the card above. Another lesson that I learned was actually from setting up my own business, because it felt like there was always something else to do. Felt like there was always something else to learn about. There was a time when I kept on going and going and going. I was very intense. I got out a lot of products, and I just never wanted to slow down because I was seeing results, and at the same time, I felt like I was just so overwhelmed and my energy was slowly creeping to a burnout. When my body finally reached that burnout phase and forced me to slow down, AKA I took a break from my business for about probably 6 months, that's when I really realized, I had to face my fear that I was having in sort of my more productive, really like producing, showing results sort of energy stage in my business. And I had to face the fear of, you're going to lose momentum and you're not going to have any other chance at doing things another way. Your business is never going to be sustainable for you. You have to accept that. So don't slow down. And so when I, as a human, had to slow down, then I thought, I wonder if I'm ever going to get that energy back from when I was making a lot of really fast progress in my business. And it turned out that it did come back, but it came back in a very steady, more sustainable way where I felt like I could both be productive, but also making sure to make room for my personal life again, really nurture my relationships that I had neglected during my sort of fast, really productive product producing stage in business. And I started to think about with language learning too, it is the exact same thing. When we are seeing a lot of fast progress, just depending on what we're using, right? Did a really intensive program for building fluency in a language. Maybe we got to study abroad. There's a lot of ways that we can see fast progress in our languages. And sometimes we feel like we are never going to get back to how we, used to be, quote unquote, in our languages. Maybe if we are in a life season that is slower, where we have more obligations to other people that take away from our own personal language learning. I started to think about language learning as seasons, as a cycle, really. And by cycle, right, nothing is linear and it's not in a straight line, right? We create a circle so that we always come back to each stage every single time. And I think once I understood that there was nothing to be afraid of, once a life circumstance pushed me into a slower pace of my language learning or of my business, and I knew that I would, in the future, when I was ready, be able to enter back into a fast progress stage for languages or into a really productive, fast stage for business, then I really had nothing to fear. And it was better to, instead of fight the current and think, I'm never going to get back to a fast progress stage, productive stage ever again, instead actually be present in the language learning process and or in the building of a business. So I really saw those parallels there, and that is a concept that I love coaching language learners on too, especially when they feel like they're always behind and they don't have enough time, they're running out. I would also say the third lesson that I learned was also one from my best friend, because she is a very high achiever, very perfectionist. We don't ask for help. And there was a really eye-opening conversation that I had with her, thinking that, when we have this sort of air about us that we project to maybe our family and our friends around us, maybe to our colleagues, that says, I can do everything myself because I think I can do it all. That got me to thinking of, in my own language learning, when I thought that I could, because I learned, Italian and German mostly self-taught, I thought, I'm never gonna need to ask for help again. In fact, I'm really proud that I didn't have to ask for help or a lot of help with German and Italian, so I can virtually do that in any language. And that really got me stuck when I actually did need help, when I was facing a lot of mental blocks. Not being able to find as many resources for really more rare languages, such as the Levantine dialect in Arabic versus like the many resources that are available in German and Italian. When we don't ask for help, then people don't know that we need them. We fail to acknowledge our humanness, right? And I think that I was doing the same thing in my language learning too. We evolved on really relying on social interactions and people and relationships. I think that my pride was very high when I didn't want to ask for help in my language learning. And I think also just as a protective mechanism that both me and my friend had exhibited as we talked about that, right? Keep on hanging on to a role that our mental health was outgrowing. With language learning being an inherently vulnerable thing, I think that crucial to get the help when it's there, because there is always a way to ask for help. It's not just one way. And I had to understand that as well in my personal life, right? I don't have to shout from the rooftop that I need help to absolutely everyone, but maybe just leaning on a few safe people that I trust. They won't even know if I need support if I don't ask for it first and advocate for myself. And so I decided to apply that to my own language learning. You know, what would happen if I actually asked for help with Arabic, which is what I did this year. And I went kind of like a 180 and went from solo language learning to completely being immersed in the country at a very intensive language school. But that was my version of wanting to ask for help, a conversation with a native speaker, asking, hey, can you repeat that? Or, hey, like, I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me in different terms? Or even just reaching out to a tandem partner or a pen pal, or maybe another language learner that isn't a native or a native speaker of your target language, but is learning the same language as you, right? And just being able to vent about what you are having trouble with, right? I even did that today with one of my friends who is also learning Arabic at the same school. And I'd love to know as well for you, what have you been able to apply maybe from life, maybe from unexpected places in your personal life? Please make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already, if you're interested in more mindful, honest language learning content, and I'll see you in the next video soon.